actually we are. And I think...
just because we shield them from distractions, we're being told that we're not preparing them for the real world.
I think that there is a lot of fear that is coming because the viewer actually isn't. If you are one of those people who has commented hate because we're not preparing our children for the real world, I think the truth is yours. One comment once explaining how I expect our children to live out on their own outside of the house after they're 18 and after they've graduated from high school, I was accused of abuse. It's like, it's abuse to expect your children to be responsible.
To grow up and be productive adults.
You guys, it's crazy, ridiculous how people are so scared of responsibility. It really does freak me out just a little bit. It's where the entitlement has come in, and so many parents are scared to raise their teenage kids. So many parents are scared of their kids. Do not be scared of your kids. Don't.
The Instagram Live was supposed to be the first and only response to the allegations. Anyone who was in doubt about their parenting techniques moving forward could refer to the live to understand what their point of view was. But the response to their response wasn't one they expected. You see, people just couldn't reason with their actions, and no matter what the Frankies said, people just weren't going to change their mind. I mean, it had even got to a point where a change.org petition was made calling for the Child Protective Services to get involved. The petition gained thousands of signatures, and believe it or not, it prompted the Child Protective Services to actually investigate. About a week after the petition was posted, the CPS arrived at the Frankie home unannounced. An agent spoke with all the children individually over the course of roughly 2 hours. It isn't entirely clear what was said, but we do know that the allegation officially was that Ruby was abusing her children. By the end of the 2 hours, the case was closed after agents were happy that the allegations against Ruby were unsupported. When they walked in unannounced, E and Ruby were baking bread together and doing a puzzle, hardly the evidence of an abusive home. They were embarrassed that they had to visit at all and apologized for the stress inflicted on the family. Now, if the CPS actually took the time out to go back and watch through the 8 passengers' videos before the visit, then their time at the Frankies' home would have been a lot different, because the evidence that they were looking for would have been discovered. Remember, it was the evidence from the videos that put Ruby on their radar in the first place, so it's confusing as to why that wasn't done. Viewers wouldn't have known about the CPS visit due to privacy reasons, but that didn't stop them from doing their own investigations. As part of their cases, they gathered said videos from 8 passengers' archives. Within a couple of days of the bed incident, both big and small content creators were making videos calling Ruby out about the abusive behavior towards her children and how she was profiting from exploiting them. Ruby's behavior was now on display for millions to see, so she and Kevin sat down with Business Insider to give their side of the story once again. In a nutshell, it's a defense piece that's supposed to make you reason with their actions, basically a written version of their Instagram story, with an added shot towards the content creators that had called them out, saying that they had taken things out of context and were pushing false narratives. Ruby said the kids had told her that they prayed for everyone who was sending negativity their way. One of her daughters told her that people were spreading rumors only because they were looking for acceptance. As for Chad, Kevin said he was in a wonderful place right now, with a good group of friends and a healthy outlook on life, where he holds high standards and high boundaries. This statement from Kevin Frankie ends the article. He's definitely not chained up in our basement. Even though that was true, no children were chained up in his basement, the same couldn't be said for what was about to unfold in the near future, albeit not at the hands of Kevin Frankie.
The enemy is attacking Zone B.
During the fall of 2018, the Frankies were on the hunt for a therapist. Remember, that would have been for Chad's rebellious behaviour, but also they wanted one for general family and couples advice as well. After all, Kevin and Ruby had been married for 18 years. There was bound to be some strain on their relationship, even if that wasn't shown on camera. Paige Hannah, a family friend and fellow Mormon, told Ruby that she knew of a woman who could help, and just like her, she also had an online following. Meet Jody Hildebrand. Jody, also a Mormon, was a licensed therapist who by that point had been in the business for well over a decade. After graduating from the University of Utah with a Master's of Science degree in Educational Psychology, she worked as a program director at a drug rehabilitation facility in Utah, specializing in addiction therapy, before eventually being employed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a family services therapist, specializing in sex addictions. In 2006, Jody decided to step away from the church to start her own private therapy practice. However, a lot of the work still came from members of the church. Moving forward, Jody wouldn't specialize in one subject anymore. That wasn't her only business venture from around that time though, because shortly after, she became the director of another company, Lifestar of Utah County. And again, a lot of the referrals came from the church. Lifestyle of Utah County was a franchise-based mental health facility that offered a 3-phase treatment program to help individuals, partners, and couples impacted by porn addiction and other sexual compulsive behaviors. Working together with clients to improve their life situation is truly a pleasure for Jody as a therapist. She engages with people from all walks of life and has an ability to connect throughout the process of therapy and self-examination. Throughout the process of therapy and self-examination, individuals, couples, and families achieve more satisfaction in their lives. She has a straightforward approach while also creating an environment of warmth and caring. Jody has a comfortable office where clients can feel right at home. If we're to go off Lifestar's testimony, then Jody Hildebrand is like many others in her field. She puts her patients first, respects their privacy, and wants to genuinely improve their lives. But in reality, that wasn't how she operated. A news article that was published a few years after she became director has the details. In 2008, Jody Hildebrand provided therapy to a married couple, identified only as Jane and John Doe. The pair had been referred to Lifestar by their Mormon bishop as their marriage was on the rocks. Between 2008 and 2010, Jody repeatedly discussed the couple with higher-ups at their Mormon church, other mental health therapists, and Brigham Young University's ethics office without having signed authorization. She accused John Doe of having a serious sexual-related addiction as part of those discussions. However, John Doe would state that all claims made against him were false. She just lied. She was pushing an agenda to destroy my life. We came there for marriage counseling, and she pulled us into her porn marathon. She spent hardly any time knowing about my life, and she didn't want to talk about my personal goals or my progress. She would only threaten me that if I didn't take more sessions and have my wife take more sessions, the alleged addiction would destroy my life. Monthly bills would sometimes cost $2,000. Jody Hildebrand would be reported by the couple, and after an investigation, was put on an 18-month probation period. During the 18 months, she'd be able to operate as normal, but had to meet 22 conditions or would face losing her license. To no surprise, she would successfully complete probation. But this behavior didn't stop there, because years on, more and more people would come out to give their testimony about Jody's sinister practices.
So just a little background, basically when my wife and I went to couples counseling, I think I was like 20. I'm gonna be turning 22 this next Friday. And so it was a short time ago. We ended up going to Jody Hildebrand at the recommendation of our bishop, and basically we started our sessions, and I immediately felt uncomfortable with Jody. I thought she was really weird. I felt like she definitely picked a side very early on who she was gonna believe and who she was gonna not believe. And as I am pretty dang sure a lot of you are aware of, Jody is a man-hater. So she made me very uncomfortable, but obviously I chose to try. Now I'm going to show you the way that she structures her groups, because I think that a lot of what she does is to isolate people from their spouses, which is obvious. But then it also is a good way for her to make a lot of money very quickly. These are the way that she breaks up her couples counseling sessions. So, I don't know if you guys can see this. I did a poor job. But basically what this represents right here is the first session at the bottom. She has both of you guys together, both the husband and the wife. And then she breaks you off into the wife has an individual session and the husband has an individual session. And then you end up going to the men's group for the husband and the women's group for the wife. And up there at the top is a $sign representing Jody making a crap ton of money for, well, separating you from your spouse when you're trying to do couples counseling. I was only there for 2 sessions. Like I said, I immediately felt that she was a little bit off. I had that intuition. I call it the Holy Ghost. You can call it whatever you want. And I felt like she was not a good therapist. My ex-wife, she did kind of like her for a short period of time, but after I quit after 2 sessions, and Jody sent me a really nasty message via text, basically saying that, you know, if you want to fix your marriage, well, you're the problem, and you know, like, your wife's trying so hard and you're not trying. I'm sorry, but I initiated couples counseling in the first place. I was definitely there to try to make my marriage work. And so was my ex-wife. We did what we want, like, we tried. And we tried with other couples counselors after her, so just rest assured that luckily she wasn't the final straw. But she was for a lot of people. And she has split apart families. And she has manipulated people into damaging good relationships with good people. And that's what makes me mad about this, is she has, well, first of all, I'm a person who wants to become a counselor. That, because of all my experiences over the last couple of years, it has made me realize that I believe, at least at this current moment in my life, that I would like to become a therapist and a marriage and family counselor, or an addiction counselor, or someone who helps people who are in desperate need of guidance and help. Jody Hildebrandt had that platform. So she not only disgraced the reputation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, us, you know, by, you know, the reputation for the church is always under attack, but specifically now because of bishops often recommending their constituents, what's the word? You know what I'm saying. Their members to maybe go see Jody. Well, first thing I want to make very clear is that the doctrine of the church does not align with the philosophy of Jody Hildebrandt. None of the things that she's teaching, the distortion, the living in truth, basically doing whatever she wants, none of that aligns with the doctrine and teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it pisses me off that people affiliate our church, or me, or anything that has to do... Anyway, I'm getting off topic. It makes me very mad that she disrespected our church in that way, because that is not what we stand for. I have been to church for a long time, and what she teaches has nothing to do with the church. It doesn't align. But on top of that, as someone who wants to go into being a mental health professional, it upsets me very strongly that she took that trust that patients have for their counselor, and she abused that trust, and she manipulated people in ways that they may never recover from. She broke laws, she broke HIPAA, she intentionally damaged the lives of people, which is a direct violation of everything a therapist is supposed to do for their clients. We're supposed to love them, like truthfully, deeply love them. And these are people who are vulnerable. Children are vulnerable. But people who come to a therapist saying, you know, my marriage is hanging on by a thread. Can you help me? For you to take advantage of that position that you have in order to manipulate people is disgusting. And it hurts me to know that there are counselors out there that will do stuff like that. My marriage did not end because of Jodi Hildebrandt, but it did suffer during those weeks because of Jodi Hildebrandt's philosophies. And so seeing her all over the internet is very frustrating to me. It's triggering. I don't like the term triggering, but I can't think of a better word to describe it. It is very triggering to see her face in every thumbnail because I'm trying to slowly digest the content and figure out, you know, just little by little, I'm taking in this content, trying to figure out what's going on and what happened and what's going to happen. And honestly, she's not convicted yet, which means that she's innocent until proven guilty, because I believe in that flag right there. I don't even know if you can see it. The United States flag hangs on my wall, so I believe in the Constitution, and I believe in the right to a fair, reasonable trial. But I have no doubt in my mind that Jodi Hildebrandt is guilty of what everyone else is saying, because of the experience that I had with her, her ability to do great harm to the people around her. And I do not know what psychological condition has put her in this mindset. I don't know if she's absolutely a narcissist, but I don't like to throw that term around. But something's wrong with her. And I hope she never practices any form of therapy ever again. And that's at the bare minimum, because I do think she needs to spend a significant amount of time, if not the rest of her life, in prison. She won't get life in prison, but I honestly think people like this should not be walking in the general public to hurt people. So, this is a video I've been told by people like, hey, go ahead and make a video, make a TikTok. I don't know who needs to see this, or I don't know who needs to see this, but what I will say is that there is a quote that John Deloney, if any of you guys follow Dr. John Deloney's show, he always says that grief demands a witness. And this is something that I may not be grieving per se, but it's been a trauma in my life to realize that a person that I trusted with a part of my family's decision making, even if it was for a short period of time, it makes you question your judgment. It makes you question your bishop. It makes you question your church, maybe. I mean, not me right now, but a lot of people, it has steered them in the wrong direction. And that is inexcusable, really. I had a few notes of what I wanted to say. I'm gonna take a look and see if there's anything else I need to cover, but yeah, just my firsthand experience with Jodi Hildebrandt was awful. My experience seeing this all come to light has been pretty uncomfortable, pretty, I wouldn't say overwhelming. I'm going to a great therapist right now. The guy's awesome, so I'm not concerned about being taken advantage of, being manipulated, but I know there are people out there who can't find a good therapist, and I just want to let you know, please keep looking. Please keep looking, because women and men like Jodi Hildebrandt, they're out there, and you can't let them be the reason why you don't pursue any kind of mental health care treatment, because it is important, because there are people like me who are out there and we care. I'm not a licensed yet. I'll see you in 5 years or whenever I become a therapist. In school for it now. But there are people out there who care. And I hope that the church is not being questioned by people because of this. And I hope that mental health professionals that are trustworthy are still able to help people. Because if mental health is stigmatized by some people anyway, this doesn't help. So I just wanted to make it very clear that bad people like this exist, but we are obligated by our own conscience to do better and to try to make ourselves healthy. And therapy can help with that. Church can help with that. Maybe you don't go to church. It doesn't matter. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, don't pull away from the things that could benefit you because of the bad apples. I know they say bad apples destroy a bunch. Bad apples ruin a bunch. That's some quote from some Morgan Freeman movie where he's a principal. Good movie, by the way. I think it was Stand By Me. And as you can tell, I'm kind of off topic on everything. But so is our president. So maybe I'll be the next president. That's just a joke for you. But I just want to let you guys know that, yes, I am somewhat a victim of Jodi Hildebrandt. And there are a lot of victims out there who have a responsibility to do the best with the rest of their lives and to heal. And I just want to say, if anyone else is a victim, feel free to reach out to me, because to an extent, because I didn't commit to Jodi as long as a lot of people did for obvious reasons. Feel free to reach out and let me know your story. And if you feel comfortable putting your face in front of a camera, that helps. But I don't really know if I have much more to say. I'm sorry this video is kind of dragging along, but I just want people to know that this whole situation sucks. And I hope Jodi gets the maximum sentence that she can possibly get. I hope she does not have the opportunity to hurt people like this again. I have some other thoughts that are very angry that I won't share, but I'm definitely not rooting for Jodi right now. I'm rooting very heavily against her for obvious reasons, because nobody deserves to be treated like this by narcissistic people.
My lovely imps. Today, drama has come to our doorstep. And it has come to our doorstep in the form of a content creator who our community has a long history with, by the name of Keffals. Keffals' presence on the internet has, for a very long time, been one that can only be described as controversial. And often controversial for all the wrong reasons. Unfortunately, today, we have to have a pretty serious talk about keffals. In advance, I'm going to ask that everybody keep themselves chill in chat, okay? Be cool. There are a lot of new viewers here today because obviously there's a lot of interest in this topic, and there's a lot of strong opinions on this topic from many different angles. I would really like it if people could be chill and not be weird freaks in chat. I would really appreciate that. And also, I think it should go without saying that if you think the solution to basically anything is online harassment, you have no place in this community. In my community, I have worked very, very, very hard to cultivate an environment in which people do not needlessly seek drama, in which drama farming and weird internet gossip behavior is discouraged. And I think that's because it's largely detrimental to the mental health of the people who participate in it, to the people who are targeted by it, to the ability of video makers and artists on the internet to get anything done, and also to truth itself online. Misinformation and narratives are rampant on the internet, and I really feel like it damages our ability to figure out anything real, and it can induce a feeling of meaninglessness to everything that's done online, and that's tragic because what we do online is not meaningless. It actually can be very impactful. This community only raids with love. This community wants to find the truth to the best of our ability, and we always want to discuss things with compassion to the best of our ability. With all that said, we need to talk about keffals. I have known keffals for a very long time. I've known keffals since before she was known as Keffals. I had always found her to be a very talented comedian. I've always found Keffals to be a very funny person, very skilled at making people laugh and making people laugh in unique ways. That was true when she became Keffals, when she created her a streaming channel around the moniker Keffals, and mostly did a lot of meme content and stuff like that. And pretty early on, she sort of pivoted from doing memes and comedy, chill streams and stuff like that, into doing more political content that was very politically charged, and a lot of focus on trans issues. And she kind of got, I guess you could call it like viral attention, whatever the modern equivalent of viral is. It's not really the subject of this section, but viral, as we used to understand it, doesn't really exist in the same way. But regardless, she got a lot of attention by doing basically Twitter ratios, where some heinous asshole would say something stupid on the internet, and she would show up and say ratio, and her post would get a whole bunch of attention instead of the post that was originally there. So the goal is that you want to create a ratio where the ratio of a reply, the likes, retweets, comments, etc., is higher than whatever the original one is. It's like a goofy internet flex, and that was all fun and fine and whatever. Although, of course, in the process of that, it definitely attracted a lot of mixed attention. There were people who were very jazzed about this, who thought it was really funny, a way of like being basically an internet troll for generally good causes. Rolling on some asshole conservative screaming about homeless people or whatever. But it also, of course, made some people mad. There's a lot of people who are going to get mad when they get kind of like made fun of or embarrassed on the internet. So there was this consistent ramping up of attention, with the ratios getting, lots of attention, lots of support and whatever, but also people getting mad about it and also disagreeing with some of her opinions and whatever. And this led to a lot of harassment being directed at Keffels when her community was very small. She had a lot of Twitter clout, I guess you could call it, for whatever that's worth. Hint, it's worth next to nothing. Twitter clout is not all that important, especially these days. But back then it was a little more important. Point is, she had a lot of Twitter clout. She didn't have a huge stream following at that point. So there was a lot of harassment. And the harassment that was directed against Keffels during this period is fairly well documented. It's pretty easy to see. At least it was. Right now, I don't know if you can actually see her old VODs anymore, but I've been present and witnessed some of the harassment that was directed her way. And of course, myself being a trans creator on the internet who has disagreed with right-wing figures, as basically all of us end up doing eventually because of the way that the culture war is right now, I've experienced it myself. The reason I'm saying all this is because I want people to understand the wind-up to what we're talking about, and also to understand why I was fairly vocal and do not regret defending her fairly frequently in the early days of her career. I was a fairly vocal defender of Keffels early on because what I saw was bullshit. I saw people being unbelievably cruel, behaving psychotically towards a fairly small streamer who had basically done the equivalent of getting a dunk in on Twitter, and the response was people, doing your typical internet 4chan era garbage, posting horrific slurs in your chat, sending you pictures of gore, that type of stuff. Just in massive amounts. And so, of course, early on, I had known Keffels from before she started streaming, and so I was very happy, and I don't regret that at all. I also, as Keffels started to build a political presence, had plenty of criticisms for her. And if you don't believe me about any of this, you can just search Keffels' name on my channel. And more recently, you could just search the term drama on my channel, and chances are you're going to see a video that contains at least some critique of Keffels, varying from a lot of critique to a little critique. I had a sort of infamous stream in which I talked about the use of the R slur, in which I very heavily criticized Keffels and some other people. And all of this, I feel proud of the way that I handled these things. And that, the criticisms and the defenses. And I wanted to talk about these because I want to be clear exactly what I'm talking about as we get further into this topic. The reason why, just as a side note, the reason why I bring up drama in particular is because fairly recently in the sort of history of the Keffels channel, Keffels made some decisions to pivot into drama content. And I am not going to, I promise, I'm not going to make this whole stream about drama content, even though I could rant about it a lot. I have very negative feelings, if you can't already tell by what I've said already, about drama content, but particularly about channels that make drama content the center of their channel. I think that it incentivizes and requires behaviors that are incredibly problematic. And some of those we are going to end up discussing in just a little bit. A lot of my issues on a personal level that came up with Keffels, and also that came up with Keffels' community, happened when she decided to make this pivot into doing drama content. It was where I felt like there was a very distinct change in the atmosphere around the community and also in a lot of her behaviors. Yeah. So I figured that was important to bring up. There's also another thing that I want to talk about, and this is going to be the center of what we talk about today, which is that I also advocated in favor of a GoFundMe that Keffels ran. Now, I want to talk about this GoFundMe, and I want to look at what it was, because this is going to be very, very important to what we're talking about today. A couple of years ago, Keffels launched a GoFundMe. I can actually, oh wait, sorry, I actually can get the date here. The date would have been August 9th, 2022. Keffels launched a GoFundMe. It was this GoFundMe right here, the Clara Sorrenti Keffels Legal Fund. Now that name is really important, but we're also going to go over the description here in a second. Now, what happened to Keffels is that a few days before this legal fund went live, Keffels was swatted, and swatted pretty severely. For those who aren't familiar with the term swatting, swatting is when online people find your private information, including your address, and they use that information to convince the police to do a raid on your house on false pretenses, obviously. It is a horrible, horrible situation that has resulted in injuries, death, and damage over the years to tons and tons of innocent people. Swatting is a genuinely terrible blight on internet existence, and it is a complicated issue too, because many police departments do not have any protections in place to prevent swatting. In America, police departments are heavily militarized, they are heavily armed, and SWAT teams tend to react erring on the side of what they call caution, aka they would rather catch a criminal than necessarily verify whether or not there's actually a threat at all. I don't call that caution, but that's what they like to call it. What this means is that in a lot of places, it can be fairly easy, all things considered, to provoke a violent response on someone who has not done a crime by falsifying information. There's swatting for you. And this happened to Keffels, a thing that I wouldn't wish on any online performer or artist or anything like that. It's a terrible, terrible experience. And from everything that we've been able to see, the experience was horrifying, traumatizing, and terrible. So when this occurred, a bunch of Keffels' stuff was taken. Keffels was briefly detained and questioned by the police, all on ridiculous false pretenses that were fabricated by people who didn't like her online. And shortly after this event, she decided to set up this Clara Sorrenti Keffels Legal Fund. And this is where things get very messy, and it has been unpleasant to even prepare and go through and think about and learn about everything that's happened here. Early on, and this is before it reached the goals that it did, which, just for the record, this legal fund reached 101,348 Canadian dollars with a 100,000 goal. So it went over $100,000, which is an incredible amount of money. That's a lot of money. That's way above the average yearly income of someone, okay? And why is it still opened? That's a good point. there's actually people still donating to it right now, which is a little bit weird. Yeah. Okay. So, early on, when this video, or when this section dropped, what Keffels was asking for was, I think the original amount was somewhere in the ballpark of 10K. Don't quote me on the exact. I don't really care about the exact number. It doesn't really matter. But the original ask was pretty low. And around that time, I was willing to promote this GoFundMe to my community. My community has a long history of generosity, kindness, willingness to go there for people who are in need. And so I said, damn, getting swatted is horrible, especially if your stuff got confiscated and you can't make an income anymore. I was more than willing to support that. And a lot of people agreed with me. Now, obviously, this blasted through the initial goals and continued on to astronomical heights. And the goal was changed multiple times. Now, some people took that as, in and of itself, a suspicious sign, but I don't really agree. And I think something that I want to make clear in talking about this is that Keffels was swatted by people who hated her ass. These people were always going to try and say that anything that she did was bad. There were a lot of people who were going to say, were going to make all kinds of accusations over any GoFundMe. But what there always was a lack of hard evidence of anything, basically, other than evidence that had been provided by Keffels that the GoFundMe was going to be used for what it was intended to be used for. Which brings us to let's read the description, shall we? Let's read what the original GoFundMe was set to be used for. I need your help, says Keffels, because I can't do this alone. I started a GoFundMe after being victimized by the London Police Services for being the victim of a hate crime. I need to move immediately, recoup my losses, and build a legal fund to protect my rights. I have been subject to emotional damages, financial damages, blatant violations of the Human Rights Act, and discrimination against me on the basis of gender identity and expression. I was also subject to unjust seizures that not only affected my livelihood, but has severely disrupted the work my fiancé is doing in their doctorate program, which has the potential to impact whether or not my fiancé finishes their doctorate. Because there is no policy in my city against swatting, there is no guarantee this will not happen again, and my home is not safe. Update. The original moving goal was met, but the hotel I was staying at while looking for a new place to live was doxxed. I am now in hiding. I am keeping the GoFundMe up, but all donations are going directly to my legal fund, which I will be using to seek justice. That's pretty important right there. Yes. So in the original version even, you can see that this was present. In the very original version, when this is the goal when it was at 20,000. So if the goal is met, I will have raised enough to recoup my losses and move immediately to a safe location. If the goal is exceeded, funds will be allocated to a legal fund to protect myself against ongoing and future threats to my safety. Now that was then edited to be donations are going directly to my legal fund, which I will be using to seek justice. Okay, so with all this in mind, this is a very reasonable ask. People here who are donating to this are looking to help someone seek justice. And a lot of people were correctly empathetic with that goal. Now, after this GoFundMe went up, there was a whole bunch of incidents that happened. There is not enough time in the world for me to go through all of them. There was numerous public clashes with various figures involved in or associated with or perhaps neutral to, but with a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge towards the people who were harassing her. She ended up going on, I don't want to, a press tour is not 100% accurate, but she went and did a number of interviews. She did a lot of live streams. She was interviewed by a number of journalists, newspapers all across the United States and Canada. Her legal fund was supported and put onto a very, very, very large platform. And if you go and watch these interviews, Keffel spent a lot of time talking about how her goal with this legal fund was to do justice for trans people, was to help trans people, to help to make the world a better place for trans kids. There was a lot of focus on what this would be doing for the trans community at large, and a lot of people resonated with that message, okay? Obviously, as we all know, in the current climate in America, there is a deranged culture war directed at trans people. It is heavily astroturfed by far-right think tanks and political figures who are extremely well-funded. And there's a lot of anger. Obviously, it's a very strange time to be living in America as a trans person, or anywhere, honestly, but most of the English-speaking world is being seized by this sort of rooted in America and funded by American right-wing political org culture war directed at trans people. So there's a lot of people who are very invested in this struggle. And Keffel spent a lot of time going on reputable sources, making promises. Promises that a lot of people were charitable towards. And the reason why I'm saying all this is because I don't think anybody who donated to any of this did anything wrong. There is a faction of people on the internet who are very invested in not just attacking Keffels, but attacking the trans community at large. And they have a very particular narrative about everything. They want the world to believe that there's some magical wokeness or something that, you know, that's operating and pulling strings, and that there's all this manipulative bullshit. But I don't know, if you go through and you read through the comments on this GoFundMe, which is still public, you can go read the comments now. The vast majority of what you're seeing is people who are genuinely giving from their heart. They're saying, hey, it's horrible this happened. We want to see you be able to get justice. And I think that it's disgusting that there are people out there who are going after not just Keffels, for what we're going to talk about in just a minute, but who are also just randomly attacking donors and people who gave out of the goodness of their heart and out of a desire to see a better world. The simple truth is that anytime you give money to any charity or GoFundMe or Kickstarter or whatever, there's always a risk that something goes wrong. And it's unfortunate when something goes wrong the way that it did in this case, because this discourages people from being trustworthy from trusting in the future. And I think that's really bad. And we're going to get into that in full as we go on. I believe that I've done a fairly good job at this point of explaining what happened all the way up to the GoFundMe and why the GoFundMe was a big deal, why a lot of people cared about it, a lot of people had given to it, and it reached very high amounts of money. And now we are going to talk about what happened and why I am talking about this all today. Okay? Today I'm going to be going over a thread that was put together by Twitter user Steroxvia, who I know. I want to say that before we even get into this, that I have independently verified all of the receipts that are present in this thread. So there is so much that we're going to be going over. But I am willing to say and vouch that I have seen all of these. Now, we'll talk about individual takes and whatever as we go through the thread. However, all of the receipts that are present here, I have seen with my own eyes, and I have independently verified them with the sources of those tweets, of those receipts. Sorry, not tweets. They're in the tweets, but yes. And without any further ado, let's get into it, and then we'll talk more about it. Let's do this. Steroxvia says, it's time to talk about the Keffel's GoFundMe situation. Below, I will prove, 1, Keffel's misled donors and spend $100,000 dishonestly. 2, her legal case, quote unquote, with the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario is dead, and Keffel's has been lying about its status to avoid questions related to the money. Is there a way that we can do this ourselves, should we desire? I don't know if you'll be able to directly verify all of these claims yourself. However, you can go read the thread here. I imagine that all of the people at this point who have done this, most of the people here are willing to discuss with the public, but let's focus on what's at hand for now. Again, as somebody who does not wade into drama, when I say that I verified these receipts, I mean that. I'm putting my name on the line. And you should be able to tell by the fact that I'm doing this at all that I take what I say on my stream very seriously. The fact that I'm even doing a segment that is as miserable and belabored as what I'm doing here about a GoFundMe that I promoted fairly lightly, should tell you that I care about what I tell to my community. That's why I'm doing this. So anyway, let's do this. Okay, so here is the first receipt. This is a screenshot that was captured and shared later from the official Keffel's editing and video production internal group chat. Here is Keffel's here. It feels really bad watching the GoFundMe deplete. The rest will cover a year rent and my psych fees if I talk to a psychologist once a week for the next 11 months. Ellen tried to comfort me, reminding me it was an emergency fund. And here is a member of Keffel's team by the name of Arif, who says, Ellen's right, but I definitely understand that feeling. Whenever I've had a windfall that I wasn't originally planning on having, I still felt bad when it was depleted. I keep trying to think of how it depleted so fast. This is Keffel's again. I keep trying to think of how it depleted so fast, and it's just so many little things. Travel, and replacing furniture, and helping my friends out, and buying new streaming gear and clothes. If anyone ever finds out how I spent the GoFundMe, I am definitely getting canceled. Anyway, sorry for venting. I'm gonna go now. I'm still heading to Dingle, lol. Now, that's a pretty terrible thing to see. And I imagine that everyone who has now seen these messages, which were leaked by a concerned party within Keffel's own team, have been pretty bothered by that. And I will admit that it has deeply bothered me as well. Let's continue in the thread. I've been investigating Keffel's GoFundMe for a long time, and I can also vouch for this. Steroxvia was one of the first people who had concerns about Keffel's GoFundMe, and who also did not take it to some kind of weird, deranged level, in my personal experience. And now that a few pieces of evidence are public knowledge, I can share what I've found. TLDR, the above screenshot is real, and the legal case the GoFundMe was supposed to go towards likely isn't happening. Strap in, this is a doozy. And again, I can verify that I have seen the original versions of these screenshots, so you know, on my word as my presence, that is not a fabricated group chat. I've had that verified by people who were there for that conversation, myself. First, what exactly did she say she would spend the GoFundMe on? According to the GoFundMe description, $20K for recouping losses, moving to a safe location, and the remaining $80K plus for a legal fund. It's important to take this at face value since it's what she's saying directly to people donating. Now we see this, we just looked at this right here, but just for it to be clear, if the goal is met, I will have raised enough to recoup my losses and move immediately to a safe location. If the goal is exceeded, funds will be allocated to a legal fund to protect myself against ongoing and future threats to my safety. And here's the update. The original moving goal was met, but the hotel I was staying at while looking for a new place to live was doxxed. I am now in hiding. I am keeping the GoFundMe up, but all donations are going directly to my legal fund, which I will be using to seek justice. On Twitter, Keffels has been less clear about how money was allocated, but here is one figure that I want to call attention to. This was shortly after the GoFundMe launched, and she gives a lower estimate of $60K for a trial, and that most of the GoFundMe is going towards legal fees. Woke up, this is Keffels. Keffels says, I woke up and I'm seeing tender careers mad at me for saying mean words at people mocking me for raising money for legal fees and to move after. I could have died because I got doxxed and fascists weaponized the police to attempt to murder me. I was the victim of a hate crime. Grow up. Keffels says, a 3-day civil trial in Canada is $60,000. The vast majority of the money I raised is going to pay lawyers, and the rest is to move and pay me and my staff because I can't work until I'm safe. Making a trauma victim explain this a week after it happened is fucked up. In order to ask for help, I had to go public and confirm my home address to the people who want me dead. The crowd that thinks me quote tweeting them is violence, but laughs at me for facing actual police violence is not getting any sympathy. I do not care how my fans treat them. There's a lot going on in this, but the core of what we're going to focus on is this $60,000 claim, okay? So, let's continue. She also reiterates that the non-legal portion of the fund is going towards moving and recouping her losses. But in my investigations, I found that she had no concrete losses to recoup. Keffels was swatted on August 5th. She later said that all of her devices were returned to her 3 days later. Let's listen to this clip.
I eventually got my stuff back in like 3 days and got an apology from the chief of police.
That's nice.
So, yeah, that was really nice. Not nice how they responded to the situation, but I'll take it. I eventually got my stuff.
So there you have it. Now, this is only one clip. There have now been multiple clips posted of her corroborating her own story about receiving her equipment back 3 days afterwards. So while it is very certainly, I think most of us can sympathize with the idea that it was very difficult and that there were probably some losses to recoup. Replacing equipment was likely not part of those costs because she got her equipment back. Let's continue. This is corroborated by a property bag shown in a CBC story about Keffels' swatting, the label of which clearly shows that Keffels' desktop tower was returned to her on August 8th, which was before Keffels actually launched her GoFundMe on August 9th. And you can actually see this up close. We can see down here that this was, the property bag was returned 8th of August, 2022. So, yeah, you have that. She received, according to this, she received her personal equipment back before even starting the GoFundMe. Additionally, a former editor of Keffels shared with me a copy of Keffels' financials from May 2022 to July 2023. In it, we can clearly see that in August of 2022, Keffels earned over $13,000, which is actually higher than the surrounding months. So this is the finance sheet that was shared by an editor from the inside, who is, again, extremely concerned about the way that this entire situation unfolded. So you can see all of it here. And as you can see, the month of the incident was a significant increase in site donations and general donations for her channel. So in this month, there was not only support coming through her standard avenues for revenue, but also through this GoFundMe. So people were donating, her own fans were shelling out in order to support her, and her GoFundMe then appeared in order to bring in another $100,000, which is, again, quite a lot of money. So let's continue. To reiterate, Keffels did not have any losses to recuperate. She wouldn't see a decline in revenue until 03/2023 after she went to rehab, which you can see again reflected here. Her losses only start to begin when she goes to rehab down here. So you can see the amounts, they fluctuate, but they fluctuate within the before and after, and there's about 4 months of increased income and a few months of slightly decreased income, but there's no real decrease until 2023, March of 2023, when she goes to rehab, which was a public thing. So let's continue. Keffels also very likely did not use the $20K to relocate to Ireland, and instead paid at least a significant portion out of it out of pocket. By 9/4/2022, Keffels was established enough in Ireland for publications to write about it, and this is a link to articles that were writing about her moving to Ireland. The next day, she would have an infamous conversation with Winter, where, when asked if she had used any GoFundMe funds for a PI, strongly implied that she hadn't spent any of the GoFundMe funds yet. And here's the screenshot. This screenshot has been, of course, verified multiple times by Keffels herself. Winter, I don't know how much money you think I make, but I was going to make 6 figures this year before the GoFundMe happened. That wasn't the question. Quit flexing on minorities, Whitey. Okay, this guy just genuinely seems like a weird piece of shit. I don't know who this is, but I don't mean to. I'm sorry. You brought up money for some reason. Did you pay for the PI out of the GoFundMe money? No, the GoFundMe money is currently in savings until I need to use it. I don't know who this Winter is, but whatever. I don't know how that translates to flexing onto minorities. I will say it is kind of weird to boast about making 6 figures, but anyway. In this exchange, you can also see how she could afford this. She was on track to make 6 figures in 2022, which is corroborated by her financials from earlier. This also adds context that up to this point, she never mentioned she's fucking rich, or at least it was at the time. Now, this is one area where I'm gonna just mildly disagree with Staroxvia here. Which is to say that, I mean, 6 figures is a lot of money. 6 figures Canadian is a lot of money. I wouldn't really categorize that as fucking rich, but it's certainly more than any of us present. Oh, I don't know. Actually, there's probably some of you in chat who do make more than that, but at least I don't make more than that. So that's a very significant amount of money for a streamer to make. That is, in fact, very good for a streamer to make. And yeah, I mean, depending on how far the amount goes, but if you're like making $101,000 in a year in Canadian, that's a good income, but it's not fucking rich in my personal opinion. Again, this is a nitpick, but I told you I was gonna do that. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say. Let's continue. This adds gravity to the situation, given that trans people are forced to beg for scraps online. So an already wealthy woman using a GoFundMe for an important cause, instead of using it to double her income, isn't just evil, it's an insult to every trans person struggling to survive. And I couldn't agree with Staroxvia more on this particular point. In fact, I think that's one of the saddest things about all of this. So I'm gonna take a moment out of reading this thread to talk about that. I know a lot of trans people. And I know a lot of trans people who have had to use GoFundMes. Trans people, as a demographic, are one of the most financially insecure groups of people, especially right now. Trans people face an incredible amount of employment discrimination, and many young trans people especially face staggering levels of family disownment, which is one of the greatest predictors for financial success in your life. If you are somebody who has a supportive family, your likelihood of financial success goes way up on a pure statistical level. And a lot of trans people, have to turn to other measures. They have to turn to a community, to found families, or to broader communities who are willing to do it. I have seen a lot of trans people raise money in the days, in my days, okay? And I can tell you that I have seen almost none ever say that they are going to fight for trans people with their GoFundMe. In fact, what I see is I see trans people ask for pittances. I see a family of 4 trans people, a little polycule of 4 trans people who are housing insecure, ask for $1,000 so that they can make a bill. Basically going online and having to be incredibly vulnerable to the world at large, put themselves into a vulnerable position and say, I need help, please help me. And these people struggle to get money. There are so many GoFundMes out there that never get a single drop of attention. There are so many trans people who put themselves out there, and they're not saying I'm gonna do a legal fund. They're not saying I'm gonna do this for trans kids like Keffels did. They're not saying that, I'm doing this for the trans community. They're saying I need help. I am extremely poor. Someone please help me. This is incredibly embarrassing, but I need some money. And then they ask for $3,000 and maybe get half of that. And when I think about that, it fills me with rage and sadness. When I think about the fact that there are people who donated to Keffels' GoFundMe because they trusted her, because they believed that she was going to do what she said that she did, pursue justice to make the world a better place for trans people. That is what she went around on the news telling people she was going to do. She did not have to do that, okay? And I want to reiterate that. She did not have to say that. None of these things did she have to say. In fact, it's very clear by the support she received from her own community that if she had just made a GoFundMe that said, I need an emergency fund, help me get enough money to get into safety, people would have given. They did. They had already given thousands and thousands of dollars. But she made a promise to her donors. She made a promise to the news. She made a promise to various communities, including my community. She made promises to me. She made promises to her team that she was going to do something more. And not only did she not deliver on that, but she didn't deliver and didn't even have the courtesy to give transparency on that. She didn't even have the courtesy to tell people that it fell under, that things didn't work out, that the lawyer said there wasn't a case. All of those were things that she could have done. She could have changed what she asked for. She could have changed how she followed up, but she didn't do any of that. She didn't. People believed her because they saw all kinds of people vouching for her, and because she made concrete claims. And as time went on, those claims did not come to fruition, as we are going to see. So, now that I've said that, let's continue. Before I get away from myself, here's the link to the original exchange with Winter, which shows that it occurred on September 5th. This is, if you want to go verify the exchange with Winter, you can actually go watch it here at this link on Odyssey. We're not going to do that because it's a whole stream. I've checked it. Anyways, while it seems that Keffels didn't need the GoFundMe to get to Ireland, she wouldn't settle down until October. This brings us to this screenshot, which was taken by a former editor for Keffels on November 30th, 2022. So this is a couple of months after the GoFundMe reached $100,000, where Keffel says all of the GoFundMe money had either been spent or earmarked.
Enemies on the zone.
And this is this one we said before. I'm going to go through it one more time. This is from November, okay, the end of November 2022. Keffel's here says, "It feels really bad watching the GoFundMe deplete. The rest will cover a year of rent and my psych fees if I talk to a psychologist once a week for the next 11 months. Ellen tried to comfort me, reminding me it was an emergency fund."
Securing the zone.
Now, real quick, I'm just going to hop back here. Legal fund. Emergency
Zone is in danger.
fund. Legal fund. A distinct difference.
Cuidado, an enemy spy skulking around.
Arif says, "Ellen's right, but I definitely understand that feeling. Whenever I've had a windfall that I wasn't originally planning on having, I still felt bad when it was depleted." And Keffel says, "I keep trying to think of how it depleted so fast, and it's just so many little things. Travel, replacing furniture, helping my friends out, buying new streaming gear, and clothes." Now, none of those things sound like a legal fund to me. In fact, none of those things sound even remotely like a legal fund. In fact, most of those things don't even sound like an emergency fund. Now, I'm going to hazard a guess, and I'm going to say that there were a lot of donors to the GoFundMe that would have been okay with her spending it like an emergency fund because they cared about her safety and they thought that she was doing a good thing. But I'm going to guess that even among the people who would have been okay if it was used as an emergency fund, would have felt at least a little bit misled, okay? If it turned out that by emergency fund, it turned out to be giving money to my friends, buying new streaming gear, buying new clothes, paying travel costs, not moving costs, travel costs. So going and doing things out in the world, traveling.
Securing the zone.
To me, what that sounds like is that money was raised for a legal fund with a small portion that was designated for an emergency move fund. And there's all kinds of things, I believe, that would be covered by an emergency move fund reasonably. You could charge food to an emergency fund. You could even say that certain pieces of furniture might be required for certain types of move fund. But just real quick, anybody out there, if you got $20,000, just cash, nothing else including your normal income, if you had $20,000 to furnish a new apartment, don't you think you could do it for significantly less than $20,000? You know, $20,000 is like what a lot of major corporations pay high-level employees as moving bonuses, okay? For $20,000, I could build 20 of these sets that look like this, okay? For $20,000, I could make 20, maybe more like 18, of my current streaming setup, which sounds amazing and looks amazing, obviously, not to blow my own horn. But that's a lot of money, okay? So when she says here, travel and replacing furniture and helping my friends, and the GoFundMe is depleting, this is a lot of money being spent. And it most certainly is not being spent on a legal fund. Keffel's, in just 4 months, potentially just 2 months, if it really hadn't been touched by September, blew through $100,000 on traveling, not moving, furniture, friends, new stream gear that she didn't need since she definitely got her devices back after 3 days, and clothes. The rest was for a year of rent and therapy, neither of which was outlined by the GoFundMe. I can even tell you how much she spent on rent. She would later tweet on her private account that her rent during this time was $2,400 a month, which is $28.8K that she had allocated. And here is a screenshot that was taken by multiple people from her private. I love living in Ireland so much. Can barely understand what people are saying, but it's so pretty, and my rent has gone from $2,400 a month to $400, so I am building some savings. I am saving up to buy a house, which is not a sentence I have ever previously stated because that was not possible. And that is terrible. That's, in the context of everything else that we know, something that would otherwise be fairly innocuous. People could be supportive. It's amazing to hear that somebody is able to finally, for the first time in their life, save for a house when they aren't also misleading people who donated $100,000 collectively to them. That is just incredible. For clarity, yes, she says her rent in Ireland is $400 a month, but she would not move to Ireland until June of 2023 when her visa was approved. Before that, she was living in Canada, which is when she was allocated a year of rent at $24K per month. Got it? Got it. So here is evidence that that's the case, that she was paying the $24K even still. Remember, she said and reiterated that most of the GoFundMe would go towards a legal case. That is a civil case which still has not happened, would cost a minimum of $60K for 3 days. And yet, by the end of 2022, the money she said was for the legal fund was gone or allocated elsewhere. This means that none of the 100K went to any of what she said that it did, which brings us to my second point. Her legal case with the HRTO, the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, that isn't going anywhere. Buckle up, fuckers, because we're only halfway done. As I've followed the progression of Keffel's legal case, her public and private plans constantly shifted and often didn't align. As a result, nailing down a robust timeline of what she was saying publicly and privately regarding her legal case has proved convoluted and unhelpful. So I will give her the benefit of the doubt and assume that her most recent plans, a complaint filed with the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario on April 10th, 2023, April 10th, 2023, remember this date because it's important, are consistent with her initial GoFundMe for a legal case. Now this is a video in which she claims to have filed a complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. This video, here's the link to it. It's in the thread if you want to go watch the full video. I believe I think we can see from this screenshot right here, this supposed filing date was April 10th of 2023. This is screenshotted from the video. So there we have it. Okay. Her video wasn't uploaded until May, but various press outlets announced it around April 21st using a press kit that Keffel's put together. Almost all of them including a clause like this, saying there was no information as to when the claim would be heard. So here we have an example of press outlets announcing this. No information is available concerning when the claim will be heard. A London police spokesperson declined to comment on the complaint. Now, just for a quick explanation here, what this means is that at this juncture, as of April 10, we have no verification other than Keffel's own words that the complaint was ever actually filed. Which means we have no evidence that there was ever a civil case against the police like was claimed in the original fundraiser, and we now have no evidence that there was anything, we have currently no evidence besides her own word that there was any human rights tribunal case even filed. Now keep in mind, filing with the Human Rights Tribunal does not have a cost associated, a direct cost associated. You might need help from a lawyer, but there's no direct cost associated with filing that. So the GoFundMe could not have gone towards that, even if it did exist, and we don't have any evidence of that. Let's continue. Thankfully, the process for filing a claim is publicly available. Once the HRTO, the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, receives an application, the applicant receives a letter, either that informing them that the application needs work or that it is good and has been sent to the other party, i.e. the London police. This is a link to the website where you can see for yourself the public-facing process. Importantly, Let's read through this. After you file a Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario complaint, once your application has been received by the HRTO, you will receive a letter that includes your HRTO file number. The HRTO will review your application to determine next steps. If the application is incomplete or more information is required, the HRTO will let you know. You can contact the HRLSC for legal advice and guidance responding to notices received after you file an application. If the application is complete, it will be sent to the respondents named in the application and any others who may be affected by the application. A labor union in the case of an application filed, e.g. a labor union in the case of an application filed on the grounds of employment. Next, the respondents must submit a Form 2 response to the HRTO. The HRTO will share the Form 2 with all parties. As an applicant, you have the option to file a Form 3 reply after receiving the Form 2. After the HRTO has received these documents or expiration of deadlines for filing these documents, an adjudicator will complete a jurisdictional review followed by an outline of the next steps for the parties. So this outlines the exact process of which there would have been documentation that could be publicly verified, of which we've seen none. Let's continue. After some back and forth, the parties convene before the HRTO to mediate and try to reach a settlement. Failure to do that will lead to a hearing. You might think that this process has an open-ended time frame, so it would be expected that we haven't heard anything, but that's wrong. This is very important. How it works. Mediation. You'll be asked on the application or response form if you are willing to try mediation. The goal of mediation is to help parties reach an agreement or settlement that resolves the issues in the application. The HRTO mediates disputes using an active listening approach. This means that both sides will have an opportunity to tell an HRTO mediator what happened and what they would like to see done about it. The mediator does not decide the application. He or she will consider what you say and look at the documents provided to help you find a resolution satisfactory to both sides. You'll need to sign a confidentiality agreement before mediation. If you settle the case in mediation, you and the other party will have to complete a form. The HRTO will issue a letter to acknowledge the settlement and close the file. If you can't reach a settlement, the file will proceed and may be placed in a queue to be scheduled for a hearing. Mediation at the HRTO is a voluntary process. You are encouraged to mediate, but if one or both of the parties is not interested in trying mediation, the application will go directly to a hearing. So this is setting out a timeline. And I know that some of this is a little bit chunky, but bear with me, okay? It's important that we understand this. Unfortunately for Keffels, the HRTO sets a deadline of 1 year after the initial filing for a hearing, should one occur. Keffels' application was filed on April 10th, 2023. The deadline for a hearing was a month ago, as of the publishing of this thread. Further now, there has been no evidence of a hearing provided. And of course, right here, you can see this. The goal of the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario is to hold a hearing within 1 year of the application being filed. Many applications are resolved earlier through negotiations between the parties or through the tribunal's mediation process. We haven't heard anything about mediation. We haven't gotten confirmation that her application was accepted. We haven't even heard about the letter she was supposed to receive right away. And all of these things are long past due. I will now catalog everything that we have heard. The next that we would hear about the HRTO case was in October 2023 when the London police concluded an investigation into the sexual assault allegation Keffels made in her application. And notably, the London police were made aware of the allegation through the media, not through HRTO. We're going to read this real quick. Sorrenti, that's Keffels, 29, launched an Ontario human rights complaint against the London police in the spring, seeking $125,000 in damages for injury to her dignity, loss of income, and special damages. In the claim, Sorrenti alleged a female officer pressed her hand against her breast during her arrest and said, "Yep, it's a she," quote unquote. London police learned about the sexual assault allegation from a media report on April 23 and notified Ontario's police watchdog, the Special Investigations Unit. According to the report, Deputy Chief Paul Bastian will present Thursday. SIU Director Joseph Martino notified London police on August 22nd that there were no reasonable grounds to proceed with a criminal charge and the case was closed. the London Police Professional Standards Branch launched an internal probe into the conduct of the officer, along with related policies and services. The report says.
Enemies on the zone.
Now, we're getting kind of deep into the weeds here, but there's a lot of this that we will never know the truth about. And we'll never know which way these things went. But what we can say from this, despite the details being fairly unpleasant to go through, is that we still, at this point along, have no evidence that anything other than the internal investigation, which was done by the police station at the request of Keffels, has been done. So we don't know. We have no evidence of any complaint being filed. We have no evidence of a legal case. None of this has been provided at this point. The investigation itself is irrelevant. Okay, well, Staroxvia said it, so, you know. Personally, I'm always skeptical of internal police investigations anyways. Likewise, I am also very skeptical of we investigated ourselves and found ourselves innocent. What's relevant is when reporting on the investigation's end, the London Free Press reached out to Keffels' lawyer for comment and got this. Lawyer Justin Anisman, who's representing Sorrenti in the human rights case, declined to comment on the internal London police and SIU investigations. We are unable to comment other than to say that we will continue to be seeking justice before the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, Anisman said in a statement. When given a perfect opportunity to update the public on the proceedings of the case, her lawyer gave us no indication that the case had progressed at all, not even so much as a confirmation that the application was accepted, despite the fact that it definitely should have been by now. In fact, here, we're continue seeking justice, but it doesn't even imply here that it was even filed at this point. And this is after it was already claimed by Keffels that it had been filed, but we saw no evidence of that. The next time she talked about it would be on February 5th of 2024, where she said this. While this may seem like the case has progressed, take note of two things. We're going to look at this real quick. Papers have been processed, and we are awaiting dates to appear in the tribunal. I'm told this could take a minimum of 2 years at best and 6 years at worst, depending on if this gets escalated to a higher judicial body. She claims the process could take a minimum of 2 years. However, we know that this isn't true. That's true. We have seen the website, and unless they're lying on their official website about the minimum time that a case is supposed to be seen in, we have